So welcome, guys. So on today's show, we have Owen. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Owen. It's a pleasure to have you here.
No, thank you so much. As we know, as hosts, it's really weird being on the other side and being the guest. And I'm excited to give it another go and see how I get on just sitting back and answering questions. It's going to be cool.
Awesome. And obviously, you interviewed us a while back. So before we carry on, just tell our listeners a little bit, just briefly, who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Owen Morgan, and I host the Awareness Space podcast. So on most major platforms, and it's a show all about exploring what awareness is, how it can help us in our healing journey, how it's important to know about human experience and what's going on for us, and how liberatingly effective that is. And it's changed my life forever. And I interview therapists and people's stories, and it's been one beautiful journey as I do all my coaching qualifications. I'm studying to be a coach and really enjoying the studying at the moment. And I've been doing massage for 8 years. So that's kind of my background of holding space for people through the massage world. So there's more to it than that, but that's the basics.
I love that your journey has kind of taken you in I would say like a non-traditional route, to be fair, like because like from sports massage into podcasting, it's a bit of just a different world altogether. So how have you found that, just out of curiosity, that transition?
Yeah, it's weird actually, because I started off in personal training. So after like horrendous trauma as a kid, and which I'm sure we'll talk about today, but I was in a really bad place in my 20s, blackout anxiety, all that kind of stuff, and fitness saved my life. So I got into running, and it really improved my confidence, and it really allowed me to regulate my nervous system, everything over time. So because I fell in love with that, I fell in love with what the body can do fitness wise, and then I fell in love with I have all these injuries and how can I work with that? So I fell in love with massage and anatomy and all that kind of stuff. I just love learning. And then that spawned into, it's interesting how these people are coming to me with all these physical problems, but so much of what they were going through, I could see was emotional and stress related and held in their body through these sort of senses. And that's when I started researching that, and then thought, oh my God, humans are amazing. The brain is amazing. And that's just how my life pans out. And then I did massage, and now I'm looking at, after interviewing all these people, like, wow, the human experience is partly complex or partly very simple. And that's why I want to discover what that looks like. And that's why I got into hosting chat shows and podcasts, and I can talk all day. I always have been able to do that. So I guess I might as well record it, isn't it?
Brilliant. Listen, like, before we jump into that side of things and the things that you've learned along the way, can you tell us a little bit more about like your personal story? Like, what were those pivotal moments? You've touched on a couple there, but can you share with us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and do this as quickly as possible to allow more space for the other questions. But my life is very trauma informed. So from being a kid and being abused at 6 years old from childminders and stuff, and my parents constantly working, so I felt lonely and abandoned. That's my childhood in a nutshell. I moved back over from Wales to England and went to school and just had 3 years of the most horrific bullying you can think of. And I was a terrified little boy in a lot of pain. So went into the world in my 20s very lonely, very depressed, couldn't leave the house, couldn't interact with new people, just about held a job down. I was in a very dark shadow place in my life. Like I said, by the time I got to my late 20s, enough was enough, and my partner left me, and I had to go into the big bad world, and that led to chronic anxiety. I was literally fainting with the anxiety and blacking out. It was so bad. And then, I got the job at this theater, and it really, really helped me get confident again and be around people that would see me and hear me and hold me in the way I needed to be seen. And while all that was happening, I got into running, like I said, and doing half marathons every other weekend, and loved it, being part of the running community, being seen again. And that led me down this path of what we've been talking about, which is exploring what trauma means and how I can heal myself. I really wanted to feel better than I was feeling. And that spark sort of pushed me into studying and training. And when I became a massage therapist, that was very powerful to hold a space for somebody and help them with their physical and emotional pain. But through all of this, also I was having therapy and NLP and CBT and all this kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I got to the sense of understanding the body and the somatics that I was able to put it all together and go, okay, I'm not broken. That's cool. I've been stuck all this time because of trauma I wasn't able to complete. I thought, wow, this is really, really empowering. And it's sent me on this journey of wanting to help other people feel empowered through many different ways. But it all came to a head, the last part of the story, which is, I keep forgetting. I sometimes say 5 years, sometimes I say 6 years. It's probably a good thing that I've moved on from it. But I had a life-threatening illness when I'm 37 now, so 32, where my entire digestive system and my stomach and everything, intestines, had all kind of got completely packed in from years of anxiety and all these other issues with dysregulation. And I should be dead, basically. It took 6 days. I lost about nearly 1.5 stone of weight when my body cannibalized itself, and it was just the most horrendous experience. And the hospital didn't spot it, and they sent me home, and it was just, I can't explain those 6 days. Never felt anything like it, and that changed my life forever. I was like, right, the physical impact of stress and all these other things can take a toll on your organs in the end. And it's a story that I need to share and tell the world about, because I'm lucky to be here, because by pure chance I went back at the right time. They were able to save me through surgery. But I think that physical impact of a mental condition is my mission now. I need to tell the world about that. So that's a very quick, rushed version of my story.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing it, because there'll be a lot of people listening that will maybe have experienced the same kind of pathway as you and have come out the other side and have this amazing story to share with the world that will help people. And there'll be some people that might be listening to this that do still feel stuck, that maybe are feeling trauma informed and feeling all of that pain that you've kind of touched upon there. And I'm sure it's like heavier than what you've almost like brushed past as well. But it's so powerful that you've been able to turn all of that pain and all of that history of your own life into something so powerful. Not only to just share the message with the world through doing interviews with us, you've got your own podcast, like you said there, you're doing your coaching qualifications as well. Like there's just no end to the impact you can make. And that's such a testament to you as a character, because you've been able to turn it around. And that's not an easy thing to do for anyone. So just to kind of lead on from that, like, what would you say to anybody that is in that situation of feeling stuck, but they feel like there is this part of them that could really turn that into something positive?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, actually. And hope after trauma is something I'm always going to believe in. And a lot of therapists that I brought on have had horrendous trauma histories who are doing amazing work. We all agree that there is hope after trauma. We talk about hope after anxiety and depression and stuff, which on some level is slightly easier than overcoming these hardcore trauma adaptations. But there's definitely hope. No one is broken. We're all when we're experiencing these things, we're a bit stuck, we're a bit dysregulated, our body is out of whack. We're not online. The whole of us isn't online. We need to remember this is natural stuff that happens to us. It's natural to have anxiety and depression. Sometimes we're going to need it in really trying situations. Just briefly, we'll need it. We obviously don't want it to be prolonged, but we have to remember that all of that happens to us. It's totally normal, the way we respond to it. We just need to change our relationship with it and hold a space for it to be there. And when these senses of pain come up, I just want people to know that if you can see it come up, and remember that you're bigger than your pain or your the sensation that comes up. So think of it as like anxiety is in a container within your experience, rather than it being your experience. So the whole of you isn't stressed or anxious or depressed. There's a container within you that has that, and your awareness of it is what makes you bigger than it. Therefore, you're always empowered to hold your pain. Now, that's a conceptual, easy thing to say. How you experience it is another question, but it's what changed my life forever over any therapy, any of this, was that when I realized that I can hold it by being a compassionate witness. And I want people to know that they can also be a compassionate witness.
Awesome. And I just want to touch on kind of what you said there about when you realized that you weren't broken. And I think that's an important thing for a lot of people to realize, is when they are going through hard times or challenging times, is the thing they always think there's something wrong with them. They always think they're broken, they're messed up, there's something wrong, they can't do whatever they're trying to do, I can't flip it around. And it's important to realize that it's nothing to do with that. It's they're not broken, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just everything they're experiencing is It's just signals that are going on, is telling you, okay, like it's time to now focus and listen and start to find a route out of there, really. And some people like wait until it gets so painful before they do something. But at the end of the day, it's just everyone to realize that it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with them. Everything they're feeling, everything they're going through is, again, it's what they're going through. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is what it is. And it's just to focus on what do you want now kind of going forward. And when they stop thinking of that mentality of I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, then they can start thinking of, like you said, it's starting to hold compassion for themselves, becoming the witness and starting to think, okay, what can I do now to come out of this? What can I do now to live the life I want? Which is, I think, extremely important. And you've gone through quite, like, based on your quick version of your story, you've gone through like quite a lot of trauma. So like, what I want to ask you now, based on who you are now, like how and why are you showing up in the world in the way you are today?
It's interesting. It's really hard to explain why I love all of this stuff so much, because it seems weird that I love talking about trauma so much, but it's just because I know that we can hold anything that comes up if we have the inner resources and the tools and people around us that can hold us, so we can hold that. And I show up as I am today purely because there's things that have never changed about me, which is bringing people together into community. I've been doing it since I was a teenager, even through my bullying. I set up an anti-bullying club in sixth form. And I used to walk home with, kids that were getting, abused and beaten up by people. And I'd walk home with them as the 6'2" sixth former, I was much bigger than the rest of these kids. So those kids stayed away from them, and I walk them home and make sure they feel safe. And that wasn't something I even thought about. I just did it. So this sense of community and bringing people together. And I'm extremely silly, which I try and put onto my podcast, but sometimes it's not appropriate. But I'm very silly. I love to make people smile and laugh and all this kind of stuff. Those two essences have never left me, no matter what happened to me, what trauma is always there. And I feel I owe it to myself to bring both those things into the world through these platforms, and just feel really deeply connected to those essences, if you see what I mean. And as long as I hold on to those, then I can kind of achieve not anything, but I can achieve anything that on some level, if I put my mind to it. And I just want to inspire people to feel the same way. And that's, I show up this way because I want it to inspire the people to be the same way as that, I guess.
I love that. And anyone listening, I think it's important to reflect upon what are the common themes or your own essences, because sometimes it's hard to see that, especially if we're suffering or if we're highly stressed out or we're still working through trauma. It can be sometimes quite difficult to notice those common themes about ourselves that are really positive, that we can actually start to leverage. Now, one of the things obviously that we know you're known for is all about awareness, right? That's such a big focus point in all that you do. And I think if everybody listening can start to become aware of those themes that show up in their life, so that they can start to see what's natural for them, it'll be a lot easier for them to lean into them. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, and why we're here? Like, why is awareness so important in all that you do?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was really influenced by a guest I had a little while back called Mike Iamelli, and I recommend you guys go check him out. He's amazing. And he came to my show and he really made me see about what he calls the sensitivity. So mapping our sensitivities. So the things that really make us feel connected to life, right? These sensitivities, these are things you're really passionate about and make you feel alive and amazing, right? These are the sensitivities. Now, they say the biggest impact trauma has is if it's a direct resistance to those sensitivities. You see what I mean? So if sensitivity of yours is to be silly, for example, like me, that's one of your sensitivities. It makes you feel connected to life. But your abuser keeps shaming you for being silly. So that's going to be more traumatic than another personality trait that isn't your own. Does that make sense? Something that doesn't mean something to you, the trauma isn't as damaging. So it made me really think about, when we talk about awareness, we don't want to just be focusing on trauma and the patterns that are caused by trauma and the thought patterns. It's important to know all of this stuff, what fight and flight means, when you're triggered, but that can be quite exhausting if that's the only use of awareness you've got, which is like, I understand what affects me and makes me feel edgy, so I will work around that. You also, like you said, need to use the harness of power awareness to say on those good days, like, wow, like I really love this and it's really important in my life that I keep it in there. And I've tried to walk away quite a few times from this kind of stuff talking and researching and learning, but my soul and my heart just like whimpers in the corner when it doesn't get to do what means most to me. And I think awareness allows us to see the whole of us, the stuff that affects us, the stuff that puts us into flow state, the stuff that makes us edgy, the stuff that makes us feel deeply connected. That's the power of awareness when you're there. And I mean, my guests joke a lot about this, that are into this sort of thing. Once you turn that on, good luck turning it off, because once you spend a couple of months at least just working on this awareness practice, this could be mindfulness and other forms, but it's amazing. You're like, I could never imagine a life now where I'm not connected to what's happening in the moment, because I just can't imagine a life like that now, going to work and coming home and eating, going to bed and not having any passions for things that I really enjoy. And maybe I don't like my job or whatever it is. I can't imagine a life like that now. I'm aware. And I think if I can instill that in other people, their life will transform over time, no matter how long it takes, because they're harnessing the check-in, the tuning in, the listening, the checking in any moment and seeing what's going on. And now I can meet trauma with this sense of humor too. Like, oh, hey, Dread, how you doing? Why are you popping up at work today? And I'm like, oh, I've got something to learn from this guy now, this Dread guy, this part of me. And I can meet it and hold its hand and say, hey, what's going down, Dread? Let's do this. Do you see what I mean? And it totally disempowers the overwhelm that these sensations could give us.
I love that. It's put so well. And anyone listening there, there's already a few like tips almost hidden in there of what you said, especially that last one there is about like just identify these parts of yourself and communicate with them, talk to them, listen, and see what you can learn from it. I'm a true believer that the greatest transformations come from learning, right? We are witnessing and being aware, but when we learn from that awareness, we actually can then get that momentum to move forwards even more. And that's when all of a sudden, like you said, there's like, you can almost like go a whole day. And if there's no passion or that stuff's missing, then it just is very disjointed. Whereas you use the analogy of like, you're standing on like a mountaintop, you look back and see how far you've come. That will happen every time you learn from these little things you're becoming aware of. And it's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And like it's like you said about obviously learning. Obviously, when you learn, you become more aware, and the more aware you become, the more you want to learn. And it's just that constant cycle. And that's when, like what you said, is once you do become aware, you can't shut it off. Because you keep wanting to learn more, and the more you learn, you keep becoming more aware, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and it just keeps expanding, which is like an amazing thing. And obviously, you being a podcaster, you've spoken to you've interviewed so many awesome people, you've gained so much amazing knowledge and learnings from those people. That's probably all rattling around in your head, and it's probably amazing to speak to these people. But what do you feel from your experience in podcasting? What do you feel are the most common theme that pops up, which you feel isn't really talked about enough?
You know what? When I saw this question, I thought, number one, it's an amazing question. I was like, oh God, because I do like a couple of interviews a week and they're all like 2 hours long. So I was like, right, what's the thing that keeps coming up? The thing is, when you say like things that come up that are not talked about, because I could pretty much talk about everything and nothing's off the table as such, it's really hard to think what comes up that people aren't. When I think about people who aren't in this realm that you and me are in, I think it has to go back to what we said earlier. It's this stuck, not broken thing. I think outside of our field that we're in, I think a lot of people, especially like my friends at work, don't have a concept of this. They actively think there's something wrong with them. They shame themselves and they think they need to be better. They need to work towards a better future. And they really suffer for that. I think what people aren't talking about is the simplicity of when we go and see therapy, we think, I'm going to go and see this person, they're going to help fix me. I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. These are just adaptations from your experiences. So how can we get you back online and integrated and feeling centered again? And I think that's what needs to be talked about more, because we say it as if it makes sense, but I think a lot of people don't know about it. And it's what I'm noticing in a lot of people's stories is they go through the shame cycle at some point, that they're actively something wrong with them. Their sense of disgust towards themselves seems to be a theme in people's stories. And when they move past that and realize that they can meet themselves with compassion, it changes everything. But if you say to somebody with no knowledge of that, what you want about being compassionate myself, that sounds silly, or how does that look? What do I just hug myself? They can't grasp what I mean when I say be compassionate to yourself. And I think that would change the world if people knew that by bringing this sense of non-judgment, safety, and compassion towards your own being, it's going to be 10 times easier to do that for other people. And I just think it starts with compassion for me. And that's what people aren't talking enough about, I think.
So powerful. One of the things that comes up for me there, as you were saying that, is there's so many similarities between people feeling like they are broken. Because I mean, you've probably experienced it with the people that you've interviewed or people that you've helped, and will continue to now help in the coaching space, is that people will come to you and they often do feel lonely because they feel like they're the only people that are experiencing this. So what you said at the very beginning as well about that sense of community and knowing that there's other people that actually feel this way too. It's actually more natural that people feel like that than it is that people feel amazing every day. If we literally like split up the population, there'll be more people probably experiencing the same pains than there would be experiencing the same pleasures. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's because no one is ever 100% going to know what you feel like. And you've got to be very careful with how you say the sentence. Like, yeah, I know how you feel. You don't. But you have an idea of the sensations they feel because you feel similar sensations. And I think people being validated to know that, yeah, I felt a similar kind of pain. So, okay, cool. Like, how did that work for you? How did you work through it? It makes them feel seen and held. And I think that's the power of therapy, right? Is that the therapist can hold you whilst you're in pain, right? Because pain and suffering is part of life, whether we like it or not, as is joy and love and awe. But the key to any therapy is that they can help you hold your pain by just being with you and seeing you and holding you. And I think that's the relatability, is that, like I say, I know what anxiety feels like as a symptom, as a sensation, but I'll never know your version. I think that's really, really important to empower people to know that their pain is very unique to them, but people can relate. And that made me feel very safe in my healing, for sure.
Nice. Listen, I think that's, again, so powerful. And anyone listening as well, it's important to know that, and to know that other people can relate, and that you are an individual that is experiencing what you're experiencing. And like John said earlier, is like, and that's okay, right? And that is natural. And because that's how we're designed, is to respond to life's challenges in certain ways. It's our system. And it's just about, again, repeating kind of what you said there, it's about then leveraging that and actually using it to your advantage, and to actually become in the right communities that are important and where people can relate, so that you can then grow and have that space held so that they can come through the other side of it.
Definitely. And one thing that I started doing for myself, and when I was in that moment of trauma or kind of depression or anxiety, it was impossible to think the way that I think now, which is, instead of thinking everything in life is happening to you, is thinking it's happening for you, whether it's classed as good or bad. And so I went through a phase where I lost my best friend to cancer. I obviously watched him deteriorate over 6 months before he passed away. And during that period, my only thought process is like, what's the point in anything? It's like, what's the point in working? What's the point in relationship? What's the point in anything? It's like, when you're losing someone so close to you. And at that time, I didn't it didn't make sense. That whole saying is, nothing's happening to you, it's happening for you. There's always a silver lining in everything that happens. And it took me a while to realize that, because what was happening at that point actually started to make me rethink my own relationship with the people I love and the people around me, because I wasn't that connected with my family. So what happened with my friend when he passed away is that made me rethink my own relationship with the people around me as well. And that made me connect more with my own family, which I wouldn't have done if that I doubt I would have done if that situation didn't happen. And that kind of makes you think that whole thing of whatever's happening around you, if it's happening to you, to someone else, if it's affecting you, it's an opportunity, but you just don't realize it at that time. Like, well, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. What came up for me there, my mind just was going through a few things, and I don't know how I'm able to listen and my brain do that. So it's obviously just podcasting for years, but it's what comes up for me, like, when you think about past events and things that have happened to you, when you think about those good times that you've been to a gig or an amazing holiday or whatever, you have these special moments. Like, in the moment, you love it, right? You're bathing in it and it's amazing and you remember it fondly, but I don't think it really teaches you anything. You already know that you love to go to gigs and you already know that you love music. It's already there. It's not impactful. But I think what happens with trauma and sadness and depression, all this stuff, is this far wiser teacher. It leaves something in you to go, oh, wow, I feel like I'm really affected by this environment or these people. And it leaves a really beautiful mark that you can learn and springboard from. You don't get that with the amazing moments. It's just there. I think that's why trauma is our wisest teacher. It makes us know what we're sensitive to and what matters most to us. And I think that's our ability to go on the growth journey. And I think everybody I met have had trauma have grown tenfold more than they would have if they didn't have the trauma. They would have just known what they like and got through life and had a great time, which is awesome. But trauma, I think, allows us to be more than we think we could be. And we really see our true power in the world. And I don't think you can have that without trauma. So that's why I always say, thank you, trauma, for everything you've done, because you've made me who I am today. And I love you. And I think that's the essence of compassion, right? Meeting it that way.
Definitely, totally agree with that.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about in terms of what we do is we want to help people to eliminate stress through wellness, so they can access that almost positive life experience. But at the same time, like, in order for them to be able to realize the big impact they can have on the world. And that's the thing. When we say positive experience, it doesn't mean like everything's sunshine and rainbows. You know, we know that we all need to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, and there's going to be tough times, but it's about learning how to release that stress and unhealthy stress in order to be able to be well. Because when we be well, we can mean well, and we can actually make a difference in the world. And I think, like you quite rightly said, there is like trauma, it really is a wise teacher. And let me ask you this, if there's anybody listening to this that really wants a piece of practical advice, and they want to get to that point where they can make a difference, and they want to share their story, and they want to really move past their trauma and learn from it and take that wisdom, how do they go about that practically?
Yeah, again, this is quite tricky, and I've got about 10 different answers to your question. So it's like, yeah, I'm trying to think if I need to talk about my awareness 5 briefly, because that's the way I live my life, or if I need to think about something more practical.
You both.
But yeah, the awareness 5, it's a bit wordy, but I just wanted to share a quick story, if you don't mind. I think will reinform what you're saying, and it will maybe help audience members. So 3 days ago, this is so present, and I'm so excited. It's the first time I talked about it, because it's obviously just quite recent. But I started to know anxiety come up, right? And I was like, what? Like, I've had anxiety for years, not like not that this was hardcore anxiety, but it came up, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And yeah, I felt agitated, and I just wanted to move, and my brain was racing and my mind was racing. And while all that was happening, because I've got this new practice, I've been able to put my awareness 5 into action. I thought, cool, right, I can hold this anxiety for a bit. Let's see what's going down here. And just trying to explore it with like this sense of curiosity, which is very powerful, and love. And the second day happened. I woke up and it was still there. And I was like, okay, well, this is weird. I don't tend to hold on to these things for so long. And I just realized at that moment how exciting this was for me. I was like, oh my God, hey, anxiety, it's cool. Just be there. I can still carry on with my day, and I can still have a good time. I notice it's there, but I'm not resisting it or pushing it away. I'm just like, this is interesting. What can I learn right now about this? So as I sort of tried to meditate, which I couldn't because I was agitated, if you see what I mean. So I needed to move. Okay, so now I'm listening to my body. It wants me to move, the sympathetic energy. Cool. All right, I'll move around. I'll go for a walk, and as it starts to shift and change, my thoughts change a little bit. So they're not so negative now, because an anxious state will impact the thoughts that naturally occur. Things started to shift, and I was able to see it clearer from being out in nature. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I'm noticing a sense of burnout here. And I was like, oh God, this is what happened, towards the end of my Manco Wellbeing podcast journey. I was like, I'm not going down this rabbit hole again. So I was able to say, hey, cool. Thank you, anxiety. You've come just at the right time to make me see that I need to create some space. I've forgotten to create space because I adore this work. And I'm getting very burnt out from having these amazing conversations. They're amazing, but they have the same impact as stress on my body. I can't cope with the excitement. I get hyper aroused on the nervous system level. And that's the same impact stress has on the body. And I need to take note of that wise moment teaching me, this is kicking in. Now's my opportunity to catch it with love and say, hey, cool. All right. You're right. Sorry, anxious Owen, I need to take a break. You're spot on. And I think that's the practical advice that I can give, is that once we start to tune in to these things that come up and really deeply listen, we can see what we need to do. And today it's drifted away. And I feel really good today, because I know that my intention now is to create beautiful space. And it's led me to take a practical choice. Okay, so how can I do something else in my life which is very beautiful, but it isn't this? Because I'm going to be longing to do more conversations. I'm going to be longing to make more videos because I love it. So I need to create another beautiful pastime, which is just for me. I don't need to tell the world. I don't need to take a picture or selfie it or anything. So I realized how much I love to build Lego with my stepson. And even though I'm a 37-year-old man, I've just bought 1,000 pieces of Lego coming from Amazon. And I'm going to have an intentional practice to dim down the lights, put on some beautiful music, maybe some rain sounds. And I'm just going to build a massive Lego house slowly and surely over the days. It's going to be like a mindfulness Lego experience. So I've listened, taken a practical choice to meet myself with this beautiful activity. And I think it's easy for me to say that after doing this for years, awareness, but you can see how that unfolds. So when we have anxiety, we do not want to be going, oh God, oh no, like what's going on? I need to get rid of this, or maybe I need to do this, and getting really agitated. We need to go, hey, okay, what's going on here? And then for me, it was burnout. I was able to see what it was. And now I can take action in a really loving way. I'm hoping I'm answering your question. I just wanted to tell you the Lego story because it's exciting for me.
Yeah.
It definitely
Yeah.
answers the question, but this led me to another one. Is what if, like you said, you've been practicing it for a long time, and so it was easy for you to go through those steps. What would you say to somebody that's struggling with that first step?
I love this question, and I know exactly how this all started for me, and I will go on and on about it all day. Learn about the body and the mind and the brain. Learn, just go and learn. Don't worry necessarily straight away with jumping straight into therapy and facing things you've been through. Just learn. It's amazing. Just watch a YouTube video on neuroplasticity or how the brain works, or fight and flight, what hormones are released, and just have a little go, because then you can go, oh right, cool, I can see what my brain's doing. Oh, no wonder I'm then thinking that way. And then that's empowering, right? I think the best way to empower ourselves is knowledge. So we can say my thoughts are more negative in nature because I'm in fight and flight state in my nervous system. Okay, cool. All right. So to sort my thoughts out, if that's what I'm wanting to do, I need to focus on my nervous system. Sometimes you need to tackle your thoughts by integrating positive ones, but actually more often than not, if you sort out your body state, your thoughts change automatically. So I think if you can just learn one piece per day about the brain, the body, the mind, it opens up the world of hope and opportunity. I think if you don't have that knowledge, you get lost. I think as soon as you get lost, you feel lonely in your journey. So my advice is watch a 2-minute YouTube video on something, and maybe one of your videos, guys. And then start there, or podcasting. Start listening to a podcast that you resonate with, and it will transform your life, honestly, even more than therapy at the beginning stage, I think.
It's such a gradual process, and I think for me it was exactly the same thing. I sort of I noticed like little red flags, if you like, within my own journey when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to like these little thoughts and ideas coming up in my head that weren't serving me. And that my first step wasn't to reach out to a coach or a therapist, it was to read a book. It was to, okay, where can I almost baby step into it? Because like you said, just going straight in with something and then suddenly talking about it with somebody, that was too much for me at that time. So I followed, like I read one book, then I read another book. Then I'm like, okay, well, this is starting to make sense. And then it was only when I started to get to a point where I was like, okay, I've kind of almost learned everything I can learn by myself now. And I felt that I was at a state of readiness that I was able to then go deeper and then explore what was going on. And it's also interesting because a lot of the clients that we work with, once they've kind of gone through our coaching program, we obviously ask for feedback and ask what was the most important parts. And very often, they will say like just the order of things and the structure of how the program itself is delivered, because we don't go straight into tackling like the big boogeyman under the bed of their life kind of thing. We literally will go into some basics and, hey, listen, did you know this about the human body, about ourselves? And did you know this is a totally natural response? And then immediately they start to feel safer with the whole experience that they then have is because they're kind of open and ready for it. So I love that that's what you've pulled up, because there's a couple of things there that resonated with me so much. And I know other people listening might be thinking, well, actually, yeah, me too. I've suddenly started listening to these podcasts. They don't even know really why. And they're going to start to think, okay, well, maybe this is part of something bigger. Maybe this is part of the solution to something that I've been struggling with for so long.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. I think from a therapy perspective too, like the best thing you can ever do before looking out for therapy is watching loads of videos on all different kinds of therapy. So like, do I want EMDR? Do I want NLP, CBT? Do I want somatic experiencing?
Yep.
Just learn as much as you can about it. Maybe hear about videos about people talking about their experiences and go, yeah, that sounds like my kind of thing. It feels fairly safe. Just empower yourself with all the information you can before you reach out, and then you'll know what may resonate. But sometimes when we don't have any of that, we just jump into what we're told to do.
Yeah.
So like you've got hardcore sexual abuse trauma, and maybe everyone says, hey, go and see a counselor. I don't think counseling is going to get fully to the what's going on there, because so much of that's in your body and stuck in there. Oh, hit my microphone. And I just think it's knowing, for me, I had to start with talking therapy. That's where I began. It was beautiful. But then after a while, I really needed to look at the somatic body experiencing therapies. And that was transformational. But it wouldn't have been transformational if I hadn't done the initial talking therapy to get a grasp of it all. And I think the studying is a version of that talking therapy where you really start to get a sense of what's going on for you conceptually and through words. It's a good place to start, and then focus on body transformation. But I think for so many of us, as much as it sucks, like it just takes time, and it takes years, and I think the trauma healing journey will last pretty much a lifetime. And that's a beautiful thing. It means you're going to feel a little bit better every day. Maybe you'll slip up and you go back. But I think we have to surrender to the fact that there is no therapy. People say, I had the therapy and then boom, I was good to go for the rest of my life. I think for regulation of the body, it takes practice. And it takes regular attention. And it's a bit like gratitude, isn't it? When you write your gratitude notes at the end of the night, if you're doing that sort of thing and journaling, it's not going to happen straight away, but your brain will start to shift and change through neuroplasticity, neural pathways will change. And then suddenly the whole world seems like a big gratitude pot. But you have to start by just writing for a month or so, a few things each day. And then that practice got you to the naturalness of it all. I just think people need to be patient with it, but just love every step, because otherwise you're clinging and grasping to a version of you that's not here right now, which creates suffering. Like, I'm not good enough now because I'm grasping and longing to this version of Owen in 2022 or 23. And you can't live like that, because it's devaluing the moment that you do have, which is very beautiful.
Right. I think that kind of takes us back to what we said earlier as well, was about, like you said, about learning more about yourself, because when you learn more, you become more aware. And then when you become more aware, you start learning more. And when you get to the point where, like Charlotte says, you've gone as far as you can on your own, as you feel you can, that's when it's a good time to then search for help outside, because then like the right questions to ask, the right, or at least the right direction to go in to ask for help. And that's something that's obviously, well, when clients come to us and they don't understand these signals that are going on, and then when they start to understand their body and what happens, then they start to understand themselves more, and they start to ask more questions, and then based on that they become more aware. For me, I remember that one thing that's kind of helped everything click into place for me when it comes to the mind and body was the Chimp Paradox book. That really helped me to understand what's going on in the head and why we think the way we do, why we act the way we do. And then from that, I was just building on that. That helped me to understand what's going on in my head and basically other people that I deal with. And then I started to just expand on that into how that affects the body, how that affects the emotions, what the sensations I'm feeling. And then it starts to go, okay, this makes more sense now. It's like you start to connect the dots. And that's, I think when you get to that point, it's extremely powerful, because then you can, like I said, you can go to a coach and go, okay, look, this is happening. I need help with this, this, and this. Obviously, like, what can you do? Instead of going, this is happening, I have no idea what's going on, fix me.
It's still very common though, as well, isn't it? And it's okay if that is the way where somebody feels like they are. So it's okay either way, or any way. It's just perfect for the individual, right? And it's just about honoring that, I think. And like you said, he's being compassionate enough to yourself to be able to say, okay, hands up, I need help. hands up, I need a book, hands up, I need a podcast, and this is my first step into something. And celebrate that little win, that little bit of Googling you do about something. That's a win, that's a step in the right direction. And we tend to make those like big things really feel so small, and actually just Googling and researching something as simple as that is so big, and we shouldn't discount it, because it's a massive kind of step on the path to an incredible way forwards.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly share two things that came up for me, like as just an example of this. So when I'm talking to men who are going through some stuff, and the world's still struggling a lot with men's health and people talking about these things, I made a video about polyvagal theory, and it's about 8 minutes long. And polyvagal theory is like one of my favorite things ever. And it's so empowering for people. And it's actually really digestible if it's delivered in the right way. So I send that video to these men who have no history of having therapy or anything else. I sent them the video, and it was like, oh man, this is really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. I didn't know about that, about the nervous system. I could even tell in the way they were and the way they were speaking, their voice and everything, that there was this additional sprinkle of hope because they were able to see this video. So I think that's why I make so many well-being videos too on YouTube like that, because I think I know exactly kind of a lot of the things that people need to hear because it was my journey. So I'm just making videos based on what I need to listen to, short and sweet, couple of minutes normally, and it can really open up their eyes. And it may not register straight away, but like a week later, something comes up, and just for a brief moment, they catch it because they remembered the video, and then they're starting to instill inner resources without themselves realizing. I think that's really, really important. And I think it's also really key for people to understand that all of these things that happen to us are a survival response, right? So fight and flight survival response, shutdown survival response. Our body's always there trying to keep us alive and to keep us protected, as is our brain. And we have to remember that our brain and body isn't going to give up on us without a fight, whether we think it or not. It will try and survive. We are in survival mode when these things are happening. If we didn't have that, we'd all be dead, because we wouldn't have the ability to not step into the road when there's a car coming. We need an element of being aware, body and mind, there's danger in the world. And I think it's totally natural, no matter how healed you are, in inverted commas, or connected, you can still be affected by traumatic events. So, and good events too. So I always think, like my story about my anxiety in the last couple of days, is the most powerful thing I noticed about this anxiety that came in is no matter how positive I am with my mindset, which I certainly am, I always see the good in things. I'm very positive and bubbly and really love life. And I appreciate the awe of me even existing on this planet. When that anxiety kicked in 2 days ago, I was like, isn't that interesting how all my thoughts out of nowhere have become catastrophizing? So I'm in a state of anxiety, and I was like, oh God, oh, my job, I wish I could just go full time doing this. And then all this narrative kicked in, like, oh, and I was looking down at my belly. Oh, I put on a bit of weight. It's funny how it completely shifts the thoughts that you have and how you then hook into the thoughts. You start to believe them, this negative thought pattern. Oh, wow, maybe I need to lose weight. I'm fat and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a really positive person that doesn't really care about my body in that respect. But the moment fight and flight kicked in, it completely changed. And we have to acknowledge and validate and respect that survival response will affect the way we think. So just take note of that. And no matter how positive you are going to have days where your survival response causes you to think really negative things. But remember, it's all crap. It's just noise. It doesn't mean anything. Thoughts aren't facts. Don't have to believe it. And just go, hey, isn't that interesting that I'm suddenly hating on myself out of nowhere? That's natural, no matter how healed you are. That's what I think.
Love it. Love the way you've described that beautifully.
Definitely. So, Owen, is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation, or anything else you think that our listeners really need to hear?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm not sure time-wise with this show, but I could go through the awareness 5 if you like. I find it quite useful. I'll just whiz through it. It's I don't know if there was an analogy. I keep messing it up. I'm using different letters. What's that? Not anagram.
Acronym.
Acronym. That's it. Thank you. I can't even explain what it is. But acronym. So I use the word aware, and then I break it down into awareness practices. So for me, daily practices, very, very powerful. But I find the way you live your life from the moment you wake up to go to bed is equally as important. So how you see the world, how you are in the world is as important as the daily practice you have. Because you could be a really anxious person and really struggling with confidence, and you have a daily practice for 20 minutes, which is really powerful over time, but you really need to start looking at how you live your day. So this is why I came up with the Awareness 5, and we go on shows talking about it, and people seem to really like it. So I'm really excited, because this is my like first bit of coaching that I've ever done, like my system, my steps. You know, we all have them, right, in the coaching realm. So these are mine. So the Awareness 5 is an awareness practice to facilitate improved well-being that really helped me. 5 techniques I use to support transformation in how I live in the moment and how I am in the world around me. So this is a practice of self-awareness, self-resilience, and self-empowerment. Yes, I am reading. I'm not this good. So I'd say number then. A is actual. So this is how I live my day to day. So actual is what's really going on here. So stepping away from the instinctive narrative and default thinking patterns that we tend to adopt. Can I open up to a deeper source of this experience? So taking time before I form a belief, step back and go, I've just been triggered by this person. Isn't that interesting how that's affected me? But it doesn't make me who I am. It's not the embodiment of me. So it's just taking time to really step back and say, wow, I've been triggered. Then you're empowered, right? You know, it's not going to overtake you. And you're not a bad person or even a good person in that moment. You're just a person that's had a reaction, right? W is words. Thoughts aren't facts, like I just said. It's just unfiltered feedback. It's a story following a body state that can affect the way you think. Can I see beyond my words and not get caught up in them? Can I see how my words also feed my body sensations? So can I see how my beliefs are being created by repeating thoughts? It's huge. The more you think about something, the more you start to believe it to be true. And then it becomes a belief system which isn't serving you because it's keeping you in a place of lack, should we say. A is anatomy. So what's going on with your body right now? This is one of the most powerful things you can ever do. So checking in with my body sensations in any given moment, whether you're having a good time or a bad time or whatever you're perceiving it to be. Just do some body scans each day. Do I feel uncomfortable around this person? Can I notice my neuroception, which is your nervous system being affected by the nervous system? Can I take notice of that in this environment? How does my nervous system dance with another? So it's just tuning in. Do I feel a bit edgy? Do I feel like I need to move? So I'm not talking about sadness or anger or upset. What's underneath the anger? Is it a sense of injustice that's coming up as this like agitation to attack or whatever? Just have a look, play with it, see what's going on. R is reactive. Can I become aware of my triggers and glimmers? This was a game changer for me. So what sets me into fight and flight or shutdown, sort of puts you in fight and flight or a sort of depressed state? What sets that trigger off? What helps me feel connected, safe and heart-centered? Can I get to know my boundaries and my limits and resources to support my nervous system in any given moment? I think that's really important to understand your boundaries so you can get ahead of these triggers before they happen. Because I think if you're a martyr and you're just people pleasing, you're probably gonna get triggered more than somebody else because your needs aren't getting met because you're just meeting theirs. So it's noticing what sets you off, makes you anxious, and what makes you feel fantastic, and integrate that into your day. Just keeping an eye. It's a bit like journaling, I guess, but for kind of body sensation, mind perspective. And the last one is ego. So this is kind of my new thing that I'm exploring at the moment. So can I see beyond perception? So beyond the perception of who I am, coming from other people's expectations, opinions, and narrative about me, seeing past the roles I play in any given moment, be it dad, friend, podcast host, being with the space of stillness outside of self-judgment, because self-judgment tends to be something that we do. If I had nowhere to be right now, no demands on my life, how would this moment actually be? And that's what I've had to do with my burnout this week. If I had nowhere to be and no demands, how does it feel? It's probably going to feel pretty still and peaceful. And I know Lego is certainly going to bring that into my life. But I just want people to know that ego is what helps us get this sense of who we are and our identity in any moment. But if you step away from ego and just be the awareness of your existence, you realize that Owen is just a word that I've now attached to me as an identity. If I was called Mark, that would be really weird because I'm not Mark. So you see what I mean? We get stuck in this identification. We just need to remember we're just a human being with cells and energy and everything else. And what ties all of these things together really for me on the healing recovery journey is to do it slowly, steadily, and with a sense of safety. So the 3 S's, slow, steady, and safe. That's the only way we can really integrate proper healing. So that's the Awareness 5. That's the 3 S's. And I'm still practicing it. I hope it makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. I love it. It's so aligned with what we do, and you've packaged it so well in a way that people will be able to remember it also. And there's so much power in that. If anybody listening to this just takes that away, perfect. Then you're going to be moving forwards, and you're going to be stepping on that road to healing and recovery much quicker than ever before.
For sure. And obviously, I love the last letter, ego. That's a big one that I had to work a lot on. I still do work on. Still comes out now and again. It will have to, yeah, exactly. But that used to be a huge barrier for me. So definitely relate to ego. But thanks for sharing. Obviously, the your 5. That is like an amazing concept.
Yeah, thank you. It's just really important to understand the identification, because so much of our attachment quite often is fueled by identification with hobbies or things we do. And I think COVID showed us that when all of that stripped away, what you left with, because when you lose all those attachments that keep you having a sense of safety and sense of meaning and all this kind of stuff, it's really important to not live our life so attached, but making sure that we surround ourselves with things that make us feel fantastic and alive and connected. But we do not want to overly attach, because it becomes who we are, and then it becomes outside of us, right? Everything's outside of us. We need the yoga class. We need to be down the pub. We need that. We can't live that way, because it could be taken away from you. And then what? You have to be flexible with your whole being, I think, to experience life.
Absolutely. And knowing that we all have the resources we could ever need within us. And within us, we could really go down an esoteric route right now, but we won't because of time. But when we start to believe that, for me personally, when I really, really learned it, and not just heard it and thought it's a good idea, but when I got it on so many different levels, that all the resources we'll ever need are within us, it just changed everything. And it was a pivotal moment where things become unleashed, and like literally life felt unstoppable. And it's something that I would like get everybody to reflect upon, whether you believe it now, whether it's the first time you're hearing something like that. It is what it is. Meet that statement where it is you are, because it will get deeper and deeper the more you reflect on it, I think. So I mean, let us ask you this. So in the last 5 years, and you might have already touched upon it obviously in this conversation already, but what's the new belief or behavior or habit that's most improved your life personally?
Oh, so many. What have I not said? I'm trying to think of something. Just make this as rich as possible through the conversation. What I'm trying to think, what, like, other than the learning, I said, the importance of going out there and learning stuff, 100%, that's a big part of it. I'm trying to think, there must be, other than that, there was something else that kept me grounded. And I think for me, look at me being struggling for once in my life with this kind of stuff. It's because I'm trying too hard. I'm attaching to want it to be different. Maybe that's the lesson here. That's the lesson. But it comes back to awareness again, I think. I just think when we realize that we can be the witness of the container of experience, that was the game changer. So I spent years doing all this therapy work and watching all these videos, and they inform that. But it's about just over a year ago, maybe longer, when I met my partner, who's a mindfulness teacher, I was really easily got to the point of being able to see, wow, I can be a compassionate witness. And I kind of know what that looks like. I know that I can go into any environment, be it a pub or work or go traveling or whatever, and be my best champion. I can always be there for myself. And the only way I could see that as being a plausible thing that I could integrate into my life is to say, all right, cool. So I can have an experience, but I can also witness it. And that changed everything for me. And I just live my life that way. And the anxiety this week has showed that. I will never have chronic anxiety again. I will never have chronic depression again. I'm too aware of that I can hold the experience. I can still feel it and allow it to be there, but I'm too aware now to let it become this chronic thing that I'm resisting, which is making it stay stuck there. I think that's the most empowering thing that I can ever believe in now, is that I could have something very bad happen to me from a trauma perspective, and it will suck and it's going to hurt and it's going to be terrible. And I'm going to have therapy to help me with it. But that is potentially part of what will happen in my life, but it will never plague me long term because of all of this awareness of what human is, be human, and awareness of awareness. So I do think it's really important to know that we can't stop all of these events, but we can certainly integrate inner resources to never be overcome by them long term ever again. I really do believe that's possible with the right support and the right resources.
Awesome. That's very, very powerful. And I say it's definitely true. It's like whatever you experience is however long you want to hold on to is your choice at the end of the day. You can't stop the experience you can't stop things from happening, but you can choose to, well, you can choose your actions going forward and your decisions going forward and how you let that affect you. And once that has passed and you've gone through, you've done your work, you've maybe seeked that help, and you've got to a place where you're back into focusing on kind of internal again, then it's like that trauma, you still remember it, but you don't let it control your life anymore. And that's, I think, very, very powerful for people to realize you don't need to live with it for the rest of your life. You can acknowledge it, but you don't need to let it control everything that you do. So thank you for sharing that. It's really good.
No, thank you guys. I've really enjoyed this. I've loved it, just to sit back and get put on the spot with questions. It's good.
So Owen, where can people find you?
So just if you type in the awareness space anywhere, something will come up probably. So yeah, it's theawarenesspace.com. That's probably the most logical place to go. It's got all the links off to different podcast channels. It's got all my well-being videos. It'll take you to YouTube. We make these short psych ed videos narrated by me. I also make videos for other people, so that's all on the site too. And my coaching will be on there as well. We do have a Patreon page and as well, but there's only, I think, one other business in the world that has a similar name. So just type it in and it will be there. But Instagram's my main platform. So I do post on other ones like Twitter and Facebook sometimes, but Instagram seems to be where my beautiful community resides. So that's where I spend most of my time with my family online. It's been amazing.
Also, we'll put all of the links in the show notes as well, so everybody will know where to find you. And I strongly recommend that everybody listening to this comes and follows you, listens to the incredible conversations that you have with people, but also not just their wisdom, but your wisdom as well. And I'm really excited to see and follow your journey even more, to see where it goes. And we're really honoured the fact that you've taken the time to come and be on our show as well. It's been really powerful, and we've learned a lot, and for sure, I know our listeners will have as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. I'm taking this is my last chatting for 4 days. I'm going to go back to work after my holiday and just step away from podcasting for a few days. So it's been great to finish this way for my little mini break, because I'm aware burnout was coming. And look, I'm taking action and creating beautiful space. There's a lesson in itself.
Definitely. So thank you very much for joining us. And it's just been actually a pleasure talking to you today. And thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast this time around.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for being on my show. Love what you guys are doing. And I encourage people to come check out our chat the other way around so we can hear more about your stories. It was amazing.